Today we're talking about AMD stock. It has had a pretty crazy last year, guys. Roughly a 300% run over the last 12 months, and it has gone from under $100 a share all the way to over to $347 a share as of making this video. And today I just want to talk about where I think the stock is going in the next year, what I think is important to keep in mind moving forward, and what I am doing with it in my own personal portfolio. If you're new here, my name's Sheldon. This is my portfolio. I have almost 140,000 invested in the market. These are all of the stocks that I own. I've been investing for a little bit over 6 years now. And guys, I just make completely transparent videos talking about how I invest. So if you're somebody that wants to learn how to invest in the stock market and how to make money with stocks, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's all build our portfolios together. So with that being said, let's hop right into it. And I want to start by talking about some of the broader market things here within the semiconductor industry. Obviously, with AMD stock, we're trading at a roughly 116 PE ratio currently, and it's gone on a crazy run, right? We're roughly a $567 billion market cap, and if we look at this ETF, this iShares Semiconductor ETF, SOXX, I think it's just one that I like to look at when I'm looking at the semiconductor industry, because if we look at the holdings, like they're pretty fairly weighted in this ETF, and they have all the biggest players in the semiconductor space, right? Like Broadcom, Micron, NVIDIA, AMD, Applied Materials, Intel, and they're all roughly weighted the same. And if we look at the PE ratio of this ETF, right, it's 49. So if we think about that, and then if we look at a couple other of the big players in the space, like hopefully this paints a little bit of a picture as to where AMD is trading and how they're sort of positioned amongst the competition in the semiconductor stocks, right? If we look at Micron first, and Micron has had, I don't know how else to say it other than a fucking incredible year. They've gone up almost 600% in the last year, all the way down from an $80 stock to a nearly $500 stock. They did go over 500. But if you look at their metrics, right, like their PE ratio is 23. And the reason their PE ratio is so low is because their earnings per share is $21. Like the earnings per share for Micron is massive. Not even NVIDIA has even remotely close to a 21 earnings per share. And because that earnings per share is so high, right, like it's going to have a lower PE ratio. But they've also gone on an absolutely insane run, right? Like if we look at NVIDIA, they have a 40 price to earnings ratio, and that's because they have just under a $5 stock at a $208 share price. So these are like, I would consider like just by looking at those high level metrics, right? Like those would be considered fairly valued, especially Micron. And if we look at AMD, like you can see that the like they have the same market cap as Micron, right? Like Micron had a $560 billion market cap, and so does AMD, right? And then if you look at the revenue, AMD has $34 billion in revenue, and Micron has 58. So Micron has $24 billion more in revenue for the trailing 12 months than AMD, but the market cap of the company is the exact same, right? That shows you the different valuations that are sort of put on the companies. And so there's like, I think there's like, if you're buying AMD right now, or if you're a shareholder of AMD, you have to recognize that there's a lot of hype in the stock, which is a good thing. That's okay. That's the reason stocks go on crazy runs, right? Think about Palantir. The amount of hype that got built into that stock was insane. The PE ratio went through the roof. Shareholders made a lot of money, right? And so that's sort of already kind of playing out, especially in the last month. Like look at the last month for AMD. Like they went from $200 a share to almost $350, and I'm speaking kind of generally here, but that's $150 move for the share price in a month. Like lots of hype is flying into this stock right now. And it's for a couple reasons, right? Like, it's not just hype for no reason. And so what are the reasons that AMD has really gone up in the last year? That's kind of what I want to talk about next. So the first reason that I want to talk about is the demand for AI has continued to just be prolific, right? The investment into AI stocks, semiconductor stocks, is not slowing down at all. This is a study from Harvard, and it says more and more money is flowing into AI. Global corporate AI investments hit $581 billion in 2025. So that's not even including the first quarter of 2026, right? Which was up 130% from the prior year. So it's more investment into AI has more than doubled. And in the private investment world, reached $344 billion, up 127 from 2024. And I can promise you, if you've been paying attention to some of the articles that are coming out, this just in the first couple months of 2026, the numbers have been continuing to climb, getting to insane levels, right? That's why you may have been hearing, oh, there's an AI bubble or whatever, but the money the money hasn't stopped flowing in, right? And the money flows into companies like AMD. And it's not just investment that's making its way into AI, right? It's also adoption. Like, we have adopted AI across every industry right now. If you're a student, you probably use AI. If you work in the corporate world or if you have a job, there's a good chance that you use AI to some capacity, right? I know I use it. I know everybody at my job uses it. I know everybody that I know, essentially, they use AI to some level in their life right now, and you probably do as well. And that has been reflected in the share price of AMD, because it is one of the biggest players in the space of being a hardware provider for, data centers and training models and things like that. And if we look at their revenue, this is it's got reflected in their quarterly revenue, right? And if we see just from Q2 2024, it was at 8% revenue growth, 17% revenue growth, 24, 35, low to mid 30s, right? And that's gone from 5.8 billion to 6.8 to 7, floated around 7. Now we're at 9.2, 10.2. So it's not just hype. It's hype plus actual results from the company, which really kind of pushes it together. And as a couple other things play out, which we'll talk about, it could really continue to push the stock price up even more. And so what are the things that could kind of continue to push it up even more? So with AMD, they are reporting earnings May 5th. So in a little bit over or around 2 weeks from now, they are going to be reporting earnings. And what are the things that are important to keep in mind in their earnings, right? This is what I think you should be watching for and keeping in mind. If we briefly look at their revenue growth numbers again, what is important here is that not only are they growing at a steady click, but they are actually accelerating growth. If you get accelerated growth in some of these revenue numbers and continued acceleration of those numbers, dude, AMD could be, a $1 trillion company, right? Right now it's only at just over a $500 billion company. But if we pull in a 40% revenue growth in the next quarter, which I'll talk about kind of the expectations from their last quarter, but that's where I think we could start to see even more growth of the stock price. A few other things. I think one thing that AMD has struggled with in the past is profit margins. And if we look at their margin, their gross margin is 52, profit margin is 12, but last time I made a video on AMD, it was about a year ago, they had a 6% profit margin. So they're slowly becoming more efficient, and money is kind of making its way down to the bottom line at a better rate, right? And you might look at these, right? These are good numbers. They're good numbers if you're comparing it to a Costco or a retailer. But if you compare these numbers to other semiconductor stocks, like look at these numbers for Nvidia. Okay, we had AMD at a top line gross profit or gross margin of, what was it, like 54 or something. If we look at Nvidia, their gross margin is 71. Their profit margin is 55. Okay, if we look at Micron, gross margin is closer. Okay, the 58. That's relatively similar to what AMD is trading at, or not trading at, but just has as an organization. But their profit margin is 41. So obviously, there's some things that AMD is struggling with compared to some of these other companies that they could start to push in that direction. So if we see their margins also really start to, grow and get closer to some of these Nvidia and some of these Micron numbers, that's going to add more fuel to the fire. And those are some of the things that we could see in the earnings. And so if we look back at AMD, or if we go to right here, this is what their guidance was. Okay, so this is from their Q4 2025. This was their earnings in February. So they guided for a $9.8 billion revenue quarter, plus minus $300 million. And so if we look at what their last quarter was, we look at their last quarter, they had 10.2. So they guided actually to be lower than their last quarter, which in one case, it's okay. Like Q4 is typically, a big spend month for a lot of people, especially more consumer facing companies. This one, you can kind of make a case for that, but it's not like, it's not the same as, a real consumer facing company. I think it's not a question of if they're going to match or come in line with their guidance. I think they're going to beat guidance. I think we can confidently say that they're going to beat guidance, but it's how much are they going to beat guidance by that's really going to control the stock price. Like if they come in line and they just hit their number, like the stock price might even go down in that case, right? Because there's so much hype, because the multiple of earnings that it's trading at is so stretched compared to some of its competitors, like they need to crush numbers. And so if they do, that's going to cause for some pretty crazy movements of the stock price, right? So I think if we can get a 40% quarter over quarter revenue growth for their next earnings report, and I did the math before this, that's going to require about a $10.5 billion revenue quarter. That's going to start to be the level where we're going to see some more gains in the stock. And we're going to start to see price targets really increase from a lot of analysts, right? That's going to be huge. And it's not only top line revenue though, it's their, like I was talking about, their margins, because that's where you start to get more in depth in the financials of the company as you go from gross margin to profit margin and through, and as money kind of trickles down into the bottom line of the business and ultimately free cash flow, right? So they're guiding for a 55% gross margin. It's hard to say, like, without, really, is this 52? Or if we look at, here we go, gross margin. So you can see they went from 49 to 50, floated around 50, dropped to, call it 40, 51, 54, and now they're guiding for 55. I think this is one of the numbers that you want to see accelerate, right? This, along with profit margin, you want to see those margins increase. If they can come in at a 57% number, that's going to again be like the level of there's going to be added hype into the stock. And I could be completely wrong with all of this. This is just what I'm thinking in terms of these numbers and what I'm paying attention to. But ultimately what I'm getting at is you want to see accelerated growth. You don't just want to see growth, but the rate that they're growing is getting bigger and bigger, right? That's going to allow you to make the real outsized gains in AMD, especially if you got in like over a year ago when I was saying that I was getting into the stock. And so if we look at like, what am I going to do with my portfolio and how am I thinking about this now? So AMD is now the biggest stock that I own in my account. I have 30 shares at an average cost basis of 124. I've been in the stock for a little bit over a year. And obviously I wish that I bought more, but it's been a pretty big gainer. We're at about a $6,700 gain on the account. Right? So it's one of the bigger stocks in my portfolio now. And that's the reason I kind of have it. I'm okay with that. I'm going to let it run. It's a lesson that we learned with Palantir. Like, ultimately, it could go down. It could go back down to where I even bought it from, right? I don't personally think that's going to happen, but when stocks are running, you got to let them run. And that's part of the reason, right, that I have VOO here. I have Costco here. So if this goes to zero, like, it's not going to kill me. It's not going to destroy my portfolio. It's a tech stock that I have a pretty big bet on at the moment, right? I have over $10,000 in the stock, 10,000 USD. But that's why I have some diversification in the account. It's my really only big bet on like the hardware of AI training and like who's really a company that's really producing the chips for it. Like Google, like they obviously have investments into data centers and cloud computing and things like that, but Google's buying AMD chips. Meta is buying AMD products. And ultimately, I'm well positioned with it. I think I'm not going to sell my shares because it's such a big position. I don't think I'm going to buy any more shares either. But I like how I'm positioned. Obviously, it's gone on a crazy run. That was pretty much what I wanted to talk about today in terms of AMD stock. Let me know if you guys have a position in AMD, if you think I'm making a mistake by keeping it such a big such a big holding in my portfolio. Maybe I am. I don't know. But I'd love to hear what you guys are doing in the stock market right now, what positions you own. If it is AMD, tell me what your thoughts on the stock are below. Yeah, if there's any other stocks that you saw in my portfolio that you'd want me to make videos on, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you made it this far, you're a legend. And that is all I got to say for today. I'll hopefully see you next week. Peace.